From Vermont to Wisconsin, the United States has some of the most rural areas in the world. Vermont. Going up north, here's one state that is considered the most rural of all states in the U.S. In fact, 82% of its population lives in suburbs and villages. This state is a part of the beautiful New England area of the U.S., alongside Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. This is the one and only Vermont, with an abundance of mountain ranges like the Green and Taconic Mountains, dense woods, fields, calm lakes, the most popular of which is Lake Champlain, and rivers, for example, the Connecticut. The state is a true natural gem and is a very picturesque place to live in. It's the only state in New England that has no water outlet, as well as no access to the beaches. Vermont is not that highly populated, with only 650,000 people residing in it. The predominant race living in Vermont is white, comprising of 95%. Hispanics and Latinos are only 2%, and there's only 1.5% of blacks in the Green Mountain State. The rest are of mixed races and other less populous races, like Native American Indians. The inhabitants are greatly spread out, with only 68 people per square mile. So, if you want to feel like you're truly alone in the wilderness and be as far from your neighbors as possible, which is a pretty relevant situation because of COVID-19, then you're in the right place. The agricultural sector is developed pretty solid here, and it's dominated by dairy production. The state does produce its own milk, butter, cream, and cheese, with about 30% of all dairy farms being organic in the Green Mountain State. But what Vermont is really famous for and considers its specialty is maple syrup manufacturing. The state is the leading supplier of it throughout the U.S., and this product became somewhat of a symbol in Vermont. Maine. The abundance of stately trees, the magnificent Appalachian Mountains, and beautiful lakes, along with rivers that truly make you feel like you're on the other side of the world, where untouched nature brings serenity and comfort. It's only one of the least populated states in the country, and according to the demographics data, it has only about 40 people per square mile. In fact, about 62% of the whole Maine population lives in rural areas, with many in the woods and farmlands, hence the only 38% living in cities. Overall, the population of Maine is estimated to be about 1.5 million people, mostly of white and non-Hispanic origin. The prevalent ancestry is English and Irish, and the third place goes to the French one, as Maine is so close to Canada, particularly to its historically French Quebec province. The white Americans make up about 95% of the whole population, with only 1.5% being Hispanic, and the other being ethnicities like Native American, Cuban, Alaskan, and much more. Even though the manufacturing sector remains the prominent employment field in the state, there are about 15,000 workers employed in the farming industry alone, and, to a great surprise, the numbers are continuing to grow every single year. Maine has quite a number of the quote-unquote newcomer farmers, the young and ambitious, who aren't afraid to try new farming techniques, even if they may not be supported by the veteran local farmers. And when you think of farmers, cows, and cheese, this one state should come to your mind. Wisconsin. Speaking of cheese, we've got to head on over to the cheese state, which is 97% rural and is also known as the America's Dairyland. In fact, Wisconsin produces about a quarter of all the cheese in America, which makes it basically the cheese capital of the country. And they don't call it Dairyland for nothing. It's right between California when it comes to milk, curd, and butter production. It's considered the leading producer of oats, cherries, potatoes, and sweet corn in the entire USA. The Midwestern states' demographic consists mostly of white Caucasians, about 86%, and 6% African Americans, residing in places like Milwaukee, Green Bay, Racine, and Kenosha. The rest 8% are split between various races like Native American, Asian, and mixed race groups. Overall, Wisconsin has about 6 million inhabitants who are spread out relatively far. There's actually only about 100 people per square mile, and that density puts Wisconsin in the 23rd place as far as the population concentration is concerned. The state is home to about 65,000 farms, so there are plenty of workers employed in the agriculture sector. It's estimated that at least 12% of the population is actually working in the farming sector. South Dakota. The Mount Rushmore state's territory is mostly occupied by farmland, at least 90%. Agriculture is the leading industry in South Dakota, and there are plenty of farms as well as ranchos on its vast territory. Farmers grow various things like corn, wheat, soy, sunflower seeds, and various vegetables. Besides farming, hunting and fishing are also the two main trade specializations, bringing income to both individuals and the country as a whole. Out of around 885,000 state inhabitants, half of them live in rural areas, and the population density is super low, with only 11 people per square mile. Hence, if you're looking to live far away from others, South Dakota is definitely your calling. The predominant race in the state is white at 84%, with the next biggest group being American Indians at 9% and Hispanics comprising of 4%. And now, it's time to go to the Deep South, ladies and gentlemen, West Virginia. West Virginia is considered one of the most rural in the entire country. Located in the Appalachian Range, the state has fertile green meadows, rich fluffy valley soil framed by rugged mountains, and some flowy fish-abundant rivers. The total area of land is about 24,300 square miles, and approximately two-thirds of the population lives in rural remote areas. The density is about 77 people per square mile, which is rather spread out if you ask me. And the total state population is around only 1.9 million inhabitants. It's a predominantly female state, and the average age of a West Virginian is 41 years old. Retirees make up about 16% of the whole population, which is only one number shy behind Florida at 17%. About 2,000 small family-owned farms do operate in the state, producing various crops like hay to be able to feed cattle, corn, wheat, rye, as well as tobacco, apples, peaches, and honey. Calves and beef cattle are also being raised specifically for sale for juicy meat cuts that you could find at your local restaurant. As far as the demographics are concerned, West Virginia is predominantly white at 93%. The Spanish-speaking community makes up about 3% of the population, and the rest are various other races. The biggest West Virginia ancestry group is German at 19%, Irish at about 16%, English at 11%, and one West Virginia's next-door neighbor is also very rural, the Bluegrass State. Kentucky. Nicknamed the Bluegrass State because of the type of grass that grows in Kentucky, it does look bluish from far away and especially from high above if you fly on a jet. The bluish purple grass buds are the reason for that interesting hue, but in real life, the grass is actually green. And it is indeed greatly enjoyed by the cattle which the state raises and then sells the meat for. Farming is in fact one of the major Kentucky economic areas, and it came in 8th place nationally for beef cattle production. It is ranked 5th in the goat farming industry, moreover, and the state is known for excellent horse breeding practices. One agricultural sector that's always been popular in the Bluegrass State, but is on the decline now, is tobacco. Much of it is grown for export these days. The population of the state is around 4.5 million now, and its density is at 100 people per square mile, which isn't too bad compared to many other states, especially like those on the west and east coasts. The majority of the inhabitants are of the white race at 88%, followed by African Americans at 8.2%, and the Hispanic population coming in at 3%, with the rest Native Americans as well as small mixed race communities. This Deep South state that we're going to talk about next has one of the highest African American and mixed race populations in the entire country. Mississippi. The Magnolia State has about 38% of the African American and mixed, which is black and white, population, but the white race is still the remaining predominant number at 58%. The majority of the state's population does reside in rural areas, 52%, and is employed in the agricultural field, which brings a tremendous amount of revenue, $7.5 billion to be exact. Overall, almost 3 million people are inhabiting the state as of now, and the population density is one of the lowest in the country at 24 people per square mile. So, you might have to actually drive yourself to the closest neighbor for a weekend get-together instead of just walking to their house. That's just how spread out people are around here. Ever since slavery, Mississippi has been famous for growing cotton, and to this day it is still the leading cotton manufacturer in the US and generates a majority of its income from exporting the crop. Also, Mississippi is known for growing sweet potatoes, corn, soybeans, and rice. The Magnolia State has one of the highest number of family-owned farms in the continental US, at approximately 35,000 altogether, but it is still behind its neighbor as far as the total number of farms are concerned. Alabama. Sweet home Alabama. Bordering Mississippi in the east, the state has a total of 43,000 farms spread across 9 million acres. Agriculture is also the leading source of income for the state, with cotton being one of the main export crops. However, even though the Cotton State is Alabama's nickname, it is significantly behind Mississippi and Georgia in cotton production, as the latter two are in the top 3 crop exporting states. Alabama also grows corn, rice, beans, and potatoes, just like its neighbors that we had discussed prior. More than 20,000 people throughout the state are employed in the farming sector, but the numbers do continue to shrink as more and more people move into cities so as to get a better life and greater job opportunities. It is much more populous compared to Mississippi, at almost 5 million people inhabiting Alabama, and the population density is a little bit above 37 people per square mile. The majority of ancestors are from Irish, English, and German heritage. And out of the 5 million residents, 73% are white, 25% black, and the other remaining races comprising 2% of the population, including mixed and Indian races.